Hi, it's Manic44 here, and today I welcome you in the review of the Evolution Ghost EMR Carbontech ETU. The replica for the review was provided by the Italian company Evolution, for which I am very grateful. Due to the fact that in Italy the upper limit for airsoft guns is 1 joule, you will see that this replica does not exceed it also. A M-lock rail, a light body and a mounted MOSFET are the main features of this replica. I will try to tell you about the DIT and the rest of its features in today's review. We'll of course see how the replica is built and what its performance is. But let's start with a small unboxing. In the cardboard box with a handle that can be used to carry the replica, we'll find the shortest instructions I've ever seen, 130 BB mid-cap magazine, and a replica with orange removable tip cover. Let's take a look at the replica itself. The rifle with folded stock measures about 69 cm and with unfolded about 78 cm. With a magazine but without a battery, it weighs about 2.4 kg, which is not much considering that the much smaller SAE-10 weighs just a little bit less. The difference in weight comes from use of polymers from which the entire body, stock and pistol grip are made, which significantly reduces the weight of the replica. Of course, there are also metal elements such as the aluminum M-lock handguard, amplifier and the outer barrel, trigger, charging handle, selector or the stock guide, as well as the foldable iron sights. Let's go back to the handguard. At the top we'll find two short sections of the wrist rail and the places for mounting M-lock accessories. There are a lot of such points, but we have to remember that the first points on the front are blocked by the amplifier, so we cannot mount the rails at the very front. The handguard with the body has a very rigid connection and we will not feel any movements. The amplifier itself can be unscrewed, which will give us access to a 40mm counterclockwise thread that is hidden inside the handguard, which makes it a bit difficult to use it. In addition, the inner barrel itself protrudes a lot. It is worth remembering when thinking about mounting, for example, a threadster unit. The body, as I mentioned, is made of reinforced polymer. Its design is very interesting and modern. Because the body is polymer, the replica itself has a slight flex, but I guarantee that it's not noticeable during normal use. The fit itself is also very good. The replica has foldable, detachable sights in form of a vertically adjustable front sight and a rear sight with a choice of aiming hole sight. The rear sight looks like it can be adjusted horizontally, but in my sight the knob responsible for this wouldn't move. On the body we'll find a one-sided selector giving standard settings such as safe, single fire and continuous fire. The selector itself works very nicely and clearly locks in selected positions. On the other side we'll find a magazine release button. When you pull back the charging handle, the ejector window will open and the dummy bolt will be pulled away. We now have access to the hop-up chamber. Turning the knob down will increase its power, and by turning it up will reduce it. The dummy bolt does not have a lock, so we have to keep the handle in the rear position all the time for adjusting the hop-up. The pistol grip is quite comfortable and has a quick access system to the motor. Just squeeze the sides of the plate, open it, pull this element out and you have access to the motor. The metal trigger has a flat design and the installed ETU detects it more or less at the end of its movement. The trigger guard itself is slightly enlarged. The response on the 11.1 volt 1200 mAh LiPo is quite pleasant, but the ETU system gets lost when pressing the trigger too quickly, which causes sometimes not to shot after the cycle is over. To achieve the maximum ROV on semi, you need to feel the trigger detection frequency. Otherwise a large part of the shots will not be fired. Going further, we will find a metal double-sided sling mount attachment point. The polymer stock is mounted on a aluminum guide, has a total of 6 adjustment points and a double-sided mounting point for a push-dot style sling attachment. Stock is slightly loose, but nothing out of the ordinary. Speaking about the stock, I have to mention the quick spring change system used in the replica. We only need a long screwdriver and an Allen key. After removing the stock, it's enough to unscrew the guide with a long screwdriver, which will give us access to the spring guide, which, after turning with the Allen key by 90 degrees, can be removed together with the spring. it gives us an opportunity to quickly replace the spring. It took me a little over a minute to change the spring. The battery is installed in the stock guide. To do this we have to completely remove the stock, because the manufacturer did not provide the option to easily remove the buttstock. There is practically no space for the battery in the stock due to the fact that the stock is narrow, but I had no problem to fit in the guide a Turnigy Nanotech 11.1V 1200 mAh LiPo. The replica has a small Tamiya plug, so I had to use an adapter, which made it impossible to completely collapse the stock. The magazine from the set has a capacity of about 130 bbs. In the replica it sits with a lot of slack, but it works without any problems. We know what the replica looks like from the outside, let's see how it's taken apart and what's inside. I start by disassembling the upper receiver. To do this I have to knock out the front pin, and after pulling the charging handle a bit back, slide the receiver forward. Let's see the barrel assembly with the chamber. The brass barrel is 266 mm long and 0.1 mm in diameter. The rotary chamber is made of polymer, and the rubber used is not the softest. In addition, the whole backing was quite heavily lubricated. It's time to go to the lower receiver. As I showed when replacing the spring, remove the stock and unscrew the guide. Additionally, remove the sling mount. By the way, I will take out the spring guide with the spring. The guide has a metal back and a polymer cone. The spring has a regular coil pitch. Next in line is the pistol grip. Thanks to the quick access system to the motor that we saw earlier, it takes a few moments. The motor itself is standard. All you have to do now is unscrew the 4 screws and we can remove the grip. The magazine release button remains, which you just need to unscrew from the other side. And to take out the pin on the trigger and the rear pin. Now the entire gearbox should come out without any problems. I will stay for a second at the lower receiver, which you can see has quite thin walls and bends significantly. As you can see, the gearbox itself stiffens the entire structure. The gearbox shell has rounded cylinder corners, which in theory should increase the resistance to cracking and displays. But from my experience I know that it does not work well the way it's done like here. The shell also has a window at the anti-reversal, so we can release it to loosen the spring if the system gets blocked in the rear position. The gears are greased classically with quite thick and sticky grease in form of a few drops dropped in the shell. The gears have a gear ratio of 11:1. The motor gear has 4 anti-return teeth and it will be a standard set if not the fact that the sector gear has a small magnet. It is used for the cycle detection system. As I mentioned before, the replica has an ETU system mounted in the place of standard contact. But do not expect too many functions. The system has an active brake, detects the cycle that connects to the previous function, and protects the battery from discharging. This microswitch, which is responsible for detecting the trigger pull. One microswitch is responsible for the selector detection. If it's pressed, then we have semi, if not, we have full auto. The safety works here only mechanically. After its disassembly we will have semi on 2 settings. The magnetic sensor located here is responsible for the cycle detection. When the magnet on the sector gear passes over it, the system knows that the cycle is over and active braking is activated. I have heard about such a solution, but it's the first time I see it in action. And not without a reason, it's not a popular system. First of all, for proper functioning we must have a set of gears with magnet installed. The second problem may arise when for some reason the gears get magnetized, for example by inserting the magnet under the shell so that no elements fall out when we disassemble it, in which case the system will stop working properly. The gears are mounted on 8mm bushings and I will describe their shimming and lubrications as mediocre. And the whole thing does not turn so well, but after correct shimming and lubrication it can be much better. The pneumatics consist of a polymer piston with a full metal rack with a polymer ventilated piston head mounted on it, polymer cylinder head with 1 O-ring and a fairly soft thick bumper, Type 2 aluminum cylinder, directional polymer nozzle approximately 21.2mm long. The nozzle has no sealing and it's mounted on a very flexible polymer tappet plate. The whole system does not pass the syringe test, leaks are probably present on every element, and even a large amount of thick grease does not help. This is what the heart of the replica looks like. Now let's take a look at its performance. Of course, I chronoed the replica before disassembling, and I did it on 0.28 gram BBs and an 11.1 volt 1200 mAh battery. Despite the lack of the seal in the system, the replica is doing quite well, generating an average of about 0.91 joules and achieving a rate of fire of almost 20 BBs per second. During the shooting test, I also used 0.28 gram BBs. There was a strong side wind that day. At a distance of 30 meters there is no problem to hit a target slightly larger than a crouching man. A similar situation is at the distance of 40 meters. I only have to tilt the replica to the right to compensate for the wind blowing from the side. Hitting 50 meters will be more difficult, but not impossible, but I have to start aiming a little bit above the target. "60 meters is only achievable when we aim well above the target, so I will say that 50 meters is the maximum effective range." The replica performed well during the game. After a whole day of fun, I appreciated that it's lighter than a metal replica of this size, but its reaction on semi left a lot to be desired. Evolution Ghost EMR Carbontech ETU is a replica with a cool modern design, but not only that. Thanks to the use of polymers, it's lighter than metal M4s the same size, but it still gives an impression of being durable. On the M-LOK guard we can mount additional accessories, and the replica offers such features as easy access to the motor, a quick spring change system without removing the gearbox, or a built-in MOSFET system. And with the muzzle energy not exceeding 1 joule, you can effectively shoot even at 50 meters. However, I have to point out a few things. Because of the amplifier used, we do not have access to the M-LOK mounting point on the front, and the inner barrel itself is so long that it can interfere with the operation of the tracer units. The stock does not have a removable buttstock, so to get to the place for the battery in the guide, we have to pull it off completely. When it comes to the gearbox, the pneumatic elements does not keep the seal at all, and the installed ETU system limits us in the choice of gears by the magnetic system on which its operation is based, and chokes when trying to shoot faster on semi, which makes the reaction to the trigger so-so. I had this replica with me on 2 games and it worked very well. On both of them. I'm appreciating the fact that the replica is lighter than other M4s that I'm used to use, and the fact that it has less than 1 joule from the box meant that I could take it to the arena without any modifications. But I was surprised how the replica behaved on semi. I'm used to squeeze the maximum possible rough from the replica on the semi, and here I felt that the replica does not even have a problem to keep up with me, as it just chokes and doesn't fire every time the cycle is over. I also don't like the magnetic cycle detection system, because if you want to upgrade the gears, or if the gears simply break, you can either have to think a way to install a magnet to new gears, or you have to be ready to replace the entire MOSFET system with another one. Besides that, the replica is nice to use, and after taking it out of the box, we just need to drop in a battery and go airsofting. Let me know in the comments what do you think about this replica. And for now, thanks for watching and see you next time.